Joan here with us today. She's a member of the Sisters, the Servants of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, or IHM Sisters. She's the President and Chief Administrative Officer for Friends in Solidarity, which is the U.S. partner to Solidarity with South Sudan. The African ministry is now in its 11th year as a collaboration of sisters and brothers and priests to train nurses, midwives, teachers, and future leaders in South Sudan. Friends in Solidarity is an initiative of U.S. Catholic religious men and women to support this work in South Sudan by raising money and awareness through promotion and education. The Tithe Committee in Social Justice at Trinity has supported this ministry for at least the last 3 years. Our original grant application I got out had a couple of really amazing and impressive statistics. The funding that Trinity gave focused on the Catholic Health Training Institute. So South Sudan has perhaps the worst health indicators in the world. 1 in 7 women die in pregnancy. 15% of children die before age 5. Only 10% of deliveries are attended by a skilled professional. The infant mortality rate is 170 per 1,000 live births. And at the time of the application, which was 3 years ago, there were under 300 RNs and fewer certified nurse midwives in the country. There's an enormous need for well-trained healthcare professionals, especially women. There are very few girls that ever attend secondary school in South Sudan. In fact, a priority of this ministry is the training of women. In the country, given fewer than 1% ever graduate from secondary school, the fact that nearly half of the students are young women at the Catholic Health Training Institute is extremely significant. It's a 3-year training program for registered nurses and midwives, and it has graduated since 2013. At this point, 3 years ago, so this is a couple years old data, 151 health professionals have graduated from the program. We're so excited to have Sister Joan here to talk to us today about the ministry of the program and how everything is going today, in current day. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much, Sue. And before I say anything, I want to just express my gratitude to Holy Trinity Parish and the Tithing Committee for all the help that they have given us. It's been just a wonderful partnership, and certainly a very great help to us as we have trained registered nurses and midwives. And I'll update you a bit on the statistics that Sue gave as we go along. So what I thought I would do is, some people ask me, well, how did you get involved? So I thought I'd share a little bit about that. And then I will tell you a little bit about Solidarity with South Sudan, so you understand it's a new model of ministry, and then take some time for questions. And then I'll do something on the Catholic Health Training Institute, and I'll try to integrate COVID as we go along during that. So I think they are asking you to put questions into the chat box, so I'll check that as we go along. As far as my own interest and coming to know Solidarity with South Sudan, I was in leadership of my own religious congregation after having spent 16 years in Africa, in first of all in Uganda, and then in South Africa. And when I finished leadership in 2012, I had at that time become aware of Solidarity with South Sudan through the Leadership Conference of Women Religious. And I had passed by their exhibits at the conferences for 3 years in a row and said, I can't deal with this now. I can't even talk to them because I was so busy with leadership. So I, at the end of that, when I knew I was not going to be in leadership, I engaged them in conversation, and I said to them, I said, I can't do what I call the frontline work. I can't train teachers, I can't train nurses, but what I can do is what I call the backdoor stuff, which is reporting, proposal writing, that kind of work, because I had done it for 10 years in South Africa. And I knew what needed to happen for this to happen in Africa. So I also looked at my own skills. I mean, I had done 10 years of development in South Africa. I had all this experience of ministry in Africa. I had 18 years of administration with my own religious congregation, and I knew religious congregations. So those things said to me when they asked me, would you, I went there in 2013. I was there 4 months. They said, will you go back to the US and start an organization to support the work of Solidarity? So I had to say, yes, I have some, what I call transferable skills that might be able to be used, although I knew nothing about organizing a not-for-profit. So initially I began in Monroe, Michigan, where my religious congregation is. And then the Leadership Conference of Women Religious invited me to have an office here in Washington. And that was a much better place for me to be. So in 2014, I moved here, and I was the regional coordinator for Solidarity with South Sudan until the end of 2015, when we were incorporated as a not-for-profit organization as Friends in Solidarity. So it's a separate organization. It's the US partner to Solidarity with South Sudan, and it's tax exempt for donations. So up until now, I've been the sole full-time staff person, and as of September, hoping to have an assistant in the office with the to-do development, because I think we'll be able to expand the work that we're doing and to support Solidarity with South Sudan in a fuller way. So maybe I could start from there. If Ashley is my tech person today, because when we tried to manage it from this side, it wasn't working. So Ashley, if you can put up the Solidarity with South Sudan. I thought, just to explain a little bit about Solidarity, those of you who had time to look at the video will recognize some of the pictures that are here. Solidarity was founded at the request of the bishops of South Sudan after a comprehensive peace agreement signed in 2005. Do you have the PowerPoint up, Ashley? I can't see it, nor can I hear you. So you're.
We're looking up. We were looking at somebody's email.
We just practiced this. You know, technology will do you in any day, but let me just go ahead and speak, and if she can get it up, that's fine. Because I had a PowerPoint presentation that would be helpful for you. Oh, here it goes. All right. So this is South Sudan in times before 2005, and actually about the same now. It is the poorest country in the world. It has no infrastructure. It fought 60 years of civil war with the North, called South Sudan, or called Sudan proper in Khartoum. And as a result, when they did declare independence in July 9th, 2011, they had no infrastructure physically or institutionally. Basically, the people are either cattle keeping people or gardeners. And they have spent most of their life trying to get enough cattle so they could marry off their sons and daughters, because cattle are like money. They are the staple. These are situations of what you see, and this is what we want to change. These are life in the camp. So it's the land of the last and the least and the lost, and we want to change it into away from this, away from poverty, away from no education, away from lack of basics, to education for children. As I said before, girls, 1% graduate from secondary school. Only about 15% are educated in the whole country. 28% of people are educated. This is a picture of the Solidarity Teacher Training College. So what is the situation in South Sudan? 1 child out of every 9 dies before its 5th birthday. Enrollment in primary schools have doubled, but only 46% of school-aged children go to school. Now, that was before the terrible Civil War. It's now closer to about 28%, and 72% of children are out of school. No schooling. It ranks last for secondary education. Women represent 65% of South Sudan's total population, 15% literate. These are the girls' statistics. The interesting thing is that we have about 20% of the students at the Teacher Training College are women, but at the Catholic Health Institute, Training Institute, 50% this year of the incoming class are women. Their current status, they have just finished or tried to end 7 years of civil war. At first they were, before the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005, they were fighting with the North, with the Muslim, the North is Muslim, and the South was Christian and animist or traditional religion. And they have been fighting with the North for over 60 years and then decided to opt for independence. The United States, Britain, and Norway were nations that were eager to assist South Sudan, and it looked like it had a promising future up until the end of 2013 when civil war broke out among the ethnic groups in the South. This ethnic hostility was never dealt with before independence, and then the hostility broke out and made major between 2 tribes, the Dinka, who held the governing power, and the Nuer, the next largest tribe. So today we have, out of 12 million people, 6.7 facing acute food security. You can see the numbers that are malnourished. About almost 2 million are internally displaced, and another 2 million are refugees in surrounding countries. 1.4 are in Uganda. So what about solidarity with South Sudan? Solidarity with South Sudan originated with a request from the Bishops' Conference that we would come and build the capacity of the people of South Sudan, because they just had nothing. And here they are, a newly independent nation. They don't have education departments. They don't have healthcare departments at a government level, let alone church level. So Solidarity with South Sudan then decided to respond, and they had also just finished being part of the Congress on Religious Life in 2004, which basically was entitled Passion for Christ, Passion for Humanity, but sought to find ways in which religious congregations could opt to work together, especially among the poor. So Ashley, another one, next one. So as a prophetic movement, Solidarity seeks to look for new models of missionary insertion. In other words, how can we be present among the poorest of the poor in our world to promote inter-congregational dialogue, bridges of collaboration? In other words, most of us don't have a lot of sisters, priests, or brothers to send from one congregation, but what could we do together? So there was a new model of religious life as envisioned, living passionately for humanity with great capacity for imagination and creativity. So the goal was to see what we could do together, and collaboration among women and men with the laity. So over 200 congregations supported this movement, either with personnel, finances, or with prayers. And the basis for it was Luke 4. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I always call this the inaugural speech of Jesus. So it was to be with the poor. So originally, the International Union of Superiors General, both the men and the women in Rome, agreed after assessment 2 times, both in 2005 and 2006, to take on this challenge. So they first went in 2008. At that time, it was called Southern Sudan. It wasn't yet independent, but the promise of independence was there. And they started with teacher training. And then in July 2011, you had the independence of South Sudan, and everything looked so bright. This is a country that has natural resources, it has oil, it has minerals, and it has a lot of agricultural resources, or the ability to develop agricultural resources. But by December 2013, civil war began. And it started in Juba with the Dinka tribe, the tribe of the president, attacking the Nuer people who were in the military. And then began 7 years of just total destruction, which was exacerbated in July of 2016 by violence in Juba and destruction of any peace process that had begun. So it's only now, in February of 2020, that the transitional government of national unity was finally put into place. It's very weak. As I say, it has very little of physical or institutional infrastructure. And a lot of the issues, one of which is bringing together an collaborative or inter-ethnic military force. These things have not been done yet. And so and also demobilizing people, taking away guns. Everybody's got guns. There are more guns there than there are people. And that's what exacerbates the fighting among tribes over cattle, is that now they have AK-47s. So the optimism of 2008 became one of survival from 2013 until now. So it's only now to get our government set up in 2020, February, COVID, comes to the fore. So that's another issue. So solidarity then as a prophetic ministry. They live and work together. So we have men and women from different congregations in different countries living together in 4 places: the Teacher Training College, the Good Shepherd Peace Center, the Catholic Health Training Institute, and of course the Center House in Juba, and then the Agricultural Training Project at Remenze. So actually 5 sites. And there's about 30. They're mixed communities, and the way solidarity looks at it is that there's the witness of a community can be exceedingly inspiring. So they're mixed communities of faith. Not all of the students are Catholic or Christian. We have Muslim students. We have different tribal groups on the campus. And solidarity as a prophetic community witnesses to the fact that people can, from different congregations, different countries, live and work together. So we focus on what unites, not on what divides, and on what gives life to the needy. So what do our students say about this? The fact that we live intercongregationally and from different tribes and different races is not lost on the students. In fact, I think it's a perfect model because the students are the future of South Sudan, and they are being shown how to live with how to appreciate and to respect the different tribes in the country. And that is what needs to happen. Until that happens, there will be no peace in South Sudan. So it's a byproduct in some ways. Maybe we didn't envision the model that we have, which takes students from all over the country, from different races, different creeds, different ethnic groups. We didn't maybe model or didn't believe that that had its own value, but it's the perfect model for South Sudan. So what started out as very optimistic, we find in 2006, by 2011, or I should say by 2013, with the start of the current war, we find a country crying out, and the need is greater than ever before. And as Solidarity says, faith gives reason to our madness. The challenge is to live this faith with missionary courage. And when other people leave from NGOs, many times because they have families and they need to leave, Solidarity has stayed. And that is also not lost on the church or on the people of South Sudan who know that Solidarity will be there for them. All right. So maybe we could look at a few, if anyone has questions, you could put them into the chat room. We can take them. I would say that this model was ambitious, okay? When we started in 2006, we expected that it would take us 10 to 15 years to train enough people in South Sudan to build the capacity so that they would be able to take over the institutions. And you will see, especially when you get to the Catholic Health Training Institute, that Solidarity and the religious of the world, along with some, especially European foundations, have built from the ground up a teacher training college, in fact, two, one was destroyed in the war, and the Catholic Health Training Institute. And that meant putting in place everything that you needed to run that college, because there is no infrastructure. As I said, there are no roads, there's no electricity, there's no water, there's no postal service, there is no physical infrastructure in South Sudan. There is one tarred road from Uganda to Juba and from the office of the governor in Wau to the airport. Everything else is dirt road with potholes big enough to swallow Volkswagens. And you're supposed to be able to have a teacher training college. We have to fly our students in because the roads are not safe and they're not good enough to put people on the road. So we pay room, board, tuition, and in some cases transportation for students who come from all over the country and from Nuba Mountains, which is technically in Sudan proper. They were supposed to be able to vote on where they wanted to go. It's also, they're probably more in tune with South Sudan than with Khartoum, and also some border areas of the country. So there's a question here. Given that girls have not been educated to such great extent now that they are prioritizing educating young women, is there any backlash societally? I'll tell you this. The secret to educating women is to keep them in school. The IBVM sisters in Rumbeck, and Father Gillespie can talk to that, he's been in Rumbeck, run a girls' school. They, as a secondary school, and they do not, it's all fenced in. They do, once those girls are there, they are not let out at all except for holidays. Because they know that if the uncle shows up and says he'd like to see his niece, that he's probably there to negotiate her marriage to another relative or another member of the tribe. So the secret is to keep them in school, because otherwise they will be married off at a very young age, 12, 13, 14. As soon will be having children. And oftentimes they're married off to older men who have 2 or 3 wives. So education of women is more and more being accepted as a good thing. So, and at the Catholic Health Training Institute, 85% of the graduates are employed. 50% of the incoming class are women. So with the Catholic Health Training Institute, it's a little bit more difficult because oftentimes teachers aren't paid. So families say, no, we'll marry her off, then we'll get cows. You know, women are like cows, and they are even named according to their color and the color of a cow. And that's the big thing, is to be able to have enough cattle to, quote, purchase a woman from another tribe. It's very difficult. Are women in leadership positions in their tribes? Okay, according to the new government, they're supposed to have, I think, 40% women. I think they're maybe about 20%. So they're getting there. Women's civil society is quite strong, thanks be to God. They're certainly not in leadership positions in their tribes, as far as I know, unless it's what they call a matrilineal tribe. And even then, it's mothers, uncle, and brothers that control the situation. Okay, what will success look like to you? What will success look like to me is that we have more and more trained nurses and trained teachers actually functioning in healthcare and in training across the country. And secondly, that we have enough in place to assume responsibility for the institutions that have been built by religious. In other words, administrators as well as tutors. So that's what success is. Yes, we originally thought it would be 10 to 15 years. We now are looking at 2026 to transfer leadership of the Health Training Institute, and it will be at least that or longer for the teacher training. And that would mean transferring it either to the Bishop's Conference and have it run with lay people, or to a religious congregation which may be willing to assume the responsibility under the bishops. Everything that we've done belongs to the bishops, which, you know, you can look at and say, well, you know, sometimes that's good and sometimes it's a challenge, but that's the proper way for it to be. See any change, is that right? Are you able to follow up with people? Yes, we do. At least we're linking with them via cell phones and via, let's see. Yeah, I would say we're linking with them. Do they need support of their parents to enter the Catholic? it would be nice, but once they reach a certain age, many of the ones who come to us are already married with families. You know, the average age is probably 23 or 24. Okay, so let's go on with the second presentation, and some of these questions I think will be answered there. Okay, we'll see. Ashley is great on this. This is really good. I wanted to let you see a little bit about the Catholic Health Training Institute, because that is the place that is supported by the parish. The Catholic, there were two, there's a little bit more history in this too. When we originally were asked by the bishops of Southern Sudan, to come, they sent two teams to assess the situation. And after the second assessment with the bishops, they agreed that we would focus on teacher training and healthcare training because of the dire need. I mean, there was a need for 26,000 primary school teachers. I mean, we turn out about, what, 50 or 60 a year? It's going to be a long time. Ashley, we still don't have the PowerPoint.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. Give me one more minute.
Fine, that's all right. Okay, just wanted to signal to you that we aren't seeing it. Okay, so they decided they would focus on teacher training and on nurse training. In the meantime, one congregation sent, I think, about 5 people, and they settled in a rural area, which they thought was going to be the teacher training college. That got changed, and so what they did was to start the agricultural training project. So we'll talk about that. So, all right. In 2005, this is before independence, they ended 21 years of civil war. And the conference, the peace agreement, focused on 5 R's of the peace accord: reconciliation, rehabilitation, reconstruction, repatriation, and re-education. So repatriation meant bringing people back from Sudan and from neighboring countries, which they did. They all came. You know, there's a lot of hope. So this is, yes, I already mentioned this. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so in March of 2006, this is the first delegation that went, and they visited all around the country. They slept in tents because there was no place for people to stay. Everything had been bombed or destroyed. Most of the churches, many of the Comboni mission, huge churches that they built and huge complexes, just totally obliterated or destroyed, and then the plants and animals had taken over. So the first one's March 2006, the second one in 2007. Okay, so here are some of the health indicators that are a little bit of updated from what Sue gave you. Child mortality, and South Sudan is the worst in the world in terms of health indicators. So child mortality, maternal mortality, 75% of all children's death, preventable diseases. 10% die before age 5, 40% malnourished, 50% lack access to health care. And the latest stat said South Sudan is the least prepared of all nations to deal with COVID-19. If it weren't for the World Health Organization, which the US has decided not to fund in the middle of a pandemic, if it were not for the World Health Organization, South Sudan would have no ability to respond to the COVID-19. They had 4 ventilators in the country, 24 ICU beds in the country, no ability to test, to track. I would say, however, that they've had to deal with Ebola, malaria, cholera, TB, and measles, and HIV and AIDS. So it's not like they haven't had to face diseases. And they have a young population. Nobody is over 60. So many of them will have the disease and they will get over it and carry on as though nothing else ever happened because they're used to dealing with some of these diseases. But as I said, if the World Health Training Organization wasn't there, they have added 60 ICU beds, they have brought in oxygenators, and they have established testing. So most of the cases, 2,000, I think about 2,000 confirmed cases are in Juba or in what they call UN Protection of Civilian Site camps, which are nearly 2 million people, as I said, are internally displaced, and nearly 1 million live in sites that are called UN Protection of Civilian Sites. They were never meant to be refugee camps, but it's where people fled. They went to the UN, where the UN had their own peacekeepers. And, there's huge camps exist, about 3 in Juba and several places around the country. And when the COVID-19 hits those camps, you can be sure it's just going to wipe right through them because there's no possibility of physical distancing. People have to go out for water. Food has been cut because of lack of resources for the UN, the World Food Program. So yeah, it's a very challenging situation healthcare-wise. So I already mentioned this. This is the focus of solidarity. So you can go to the next one. Okay, this is a map of where South Sudan is located and also where the solidarity projects are. So you can see we're surrounded, it's landlocked by the Congo, Central African Republic, Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda, and Kenya. They would be down in the southern part. And the projects, can you go back one? Okay, are located Juba, and I told you that road goes right down into Uganda and Kenya. What road there is, there's one that goes to Uganda that's paved. So all of the projects, you can see where they're located. Many of them in Western Equatoria, and then the Health Training Institute is in Wow, okay? You can go to the next, yeah. All right, so go to the next one. Okay, the Health Training Institute was built in the late 1970s and managed on agreement with the Sudan Conference of Catholic Bishops Conference and the government of Sudan. It was built by Miserior, which is a German Catholic organization which partnered with the Bishops Conference for the training of middle-level health professionals, in other words, nurses and midwives. Okay. It functioned for only 3 years in WOW, from 83 to 86, because of civil war, and all of the missionaries and all of the staff, everybody fled the country. They went so fast that the science experiments were still on the table when Solidarity went there to take it over. So they transferred the program for training of healthcare professionals to North Sudan, where it functioned until 96, and then it was closed. So one of the things that had to happen is there had to be clarification of the lease between the Sudan Conference of Catholic Bishops and the government in order to take over or reclaim the ownership of the premises for the Bishops Conference. That was something else. We'll see in a minute, but what the bishops decided was that Solidarity would rehabilitate this 2-story stone structure. You'll see some pictures more of it in a minute. So what Solidarity said they would do is they would pledge personnel. That was priests, brothers, and sisters, and the Comboni sisters took the lead. And then the funds for renovation, training, and running costs, they would involve the local church, that's the Diocese of Wow, on the board, and they would promote capacity development of locals to assume responsibility, okay? This was the first group. You have Sister Esperance on the left, my left at least, from the Comboni Sisters. She's Congolese, and she was the first person to come to help. And Sister Kathy Arata, who is a school sister of Notre Dame, who is considered the mother foundress of Solidarity because she walked the streets of Juba looking for a place for us to start and was instrumental in getting things going in South Sudan. She had previously spent time in El Salvador. This is the room where all the documentation was by the time Solidarity reached there in 2008, I think it was. They had to find the lease documents that prove that the Bishops' Conference owned the center. Now, can you imagine going through all this? They found the documents, okay? Here we have the signing of an agreement between the government of South Sudan and the Ministry of Health and the Bishops' Conference in 2009. This is the building as it was before it was repaired. You can see it's a two-story structure. It's built of this stone, locally made stone. It was a wonderful building, a wonderful building. And so it was deemed ready to be rehabilitated. However, when they got in there, a German firm, remind you, there's nobody in South Sudan who can do construction. Nobody trained. So they imported Robert was his name, from Uganda to help with renovation of the center. When they got in there, they realized that one whole section of the building was sinking because it's near a river and there was no foundation underneath it. So they had to lift this two-story building on one side and put a foundation under it. So this is the picture of that going on. And they involved a lot of different people in trying to reclaim the property, including prisoners. This is the main building renovated. It even has a satellite for internet services. And these are the first 5 sisters that went there. The 2 sisters you can tell are from India, and they ran the center with Sister Esperance in the middle. And then the one in the yellow shirt, Sister Maria Martinelli, a Comboni doctor, actually took on rehabilitating a hospital which was had been taken over by the military, so that we would have a place to do clinical practice. So as a result, graduates of the Catholic Health Training Institute are perhaps the best trained in the country in clinical experience. It's not all out of a book, which is most of the other training institutes. Okay, they needed to develop the curriculum and decide what was needed. Here they are working on curriculum. And then they went to the Ministry of Health in WOW to get the curriculum approved. And here was the office. One of the things that they had to do after 2005, many of the people coming back from Sudan had taken over much of the center with their animals and their families and were living in the building. So they had to find places for people to live, to move out so that they could rehabilitate the center. They also had to develop housing for Solidarity staff. So there were bungalows on the property which again were made of stone and were quite sturdy. So they joined 2 bungalows to make a community house and installed separate showers and toilets in each of the rooms so that you could have men and women living together in the same building. So the initial training program was for registered nurses, and it was the first registered nurses program in the country. And that was started in 2010. And that was the first program. And then the training of midwives came in 2012. So, but they had to register the institute and give it a name, so it became the Catholic Health Training Institute. Here's the motto and logo. The vision: improved health care for people of Sudan. At that time, see, this is before independence, so it would have been Southern Sudan, okay? And the mission: to train committed health professionals of high moral standard. So this was the first intake in 2010. You can notice there were many more men than women because only 20% were women at that point in time. In 2012, this is the graduation class of actually 2015, because the program is 3 years long. And you can see they dress up, because this is such an event to have somebody in your family, first of all, that graduated from secondary school and then graduated from as a nurse or a midwife, was just unheard of. So here I mentioned the clinical experience and how well trained students are. They're known for their clinical skills. This is a picture of the Daniel Comboni Hospital, and the midwives wear one color uniform and the nurses another, so we can tell who they are. These are the graduates in 2019. The number of graduates was, let's see, I have that written down here. In 2019, you had 22 registered nurses and 15 midwives with their different colored gowns. So what is the impact? In 2009, in the country, there were 83 registered nurses and 19 midwives, and I think about 9 doctors in the country, okay? The total number of graduates since then, 154 registered nurses and 71 registered midwives. So you can see we have enhanced the country. 85 or more % are employed in healthcare in either mission hospitals, government hospitals, or in non-governmental organizations. Some have gone on for further studies, so that our hope is that they can come back and be tutors and maybe also be administrators if they're trained that way. So 22% of all graduates in the country in 2019, every year they either graduate with distinction or high credit. No one has ever failed those state exams. 50%, yeah, I mentioned that. Student intake are women now and well employed. So the impact is great on the country. And this is in 2018, just so you could see, at the end of 2018, all the different places around the country where graduates were posted. So we're having an impact. You know, one well-trained nurse in a clinic makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so again, we can take on some questions. What can we in the US learn from the people of Sudan and from your work there? Collaboration makes a difference, for one thing. And I'm thinking of the polarization in our own country right now. The more we can integrate different cultures and different ethnic groups into teams, the better off we'll be for the future. And I think that's what's happening in South Sudan is when you ask a student, what's the most important thing you've learned? And I've gotten this over and over again on trips that I've made there. I've learned to respect and appreciate people from other cultures. And they make friends. You know, they're on the campus holding hands. That's a common thing in Africa, to hold hands. It doesn't mean anything. Men hold hands, women hold hands. They're friends. And they're in teams working with people from different cultures. In the clinical experience, they're living and working with people from different tribes in the living situation, in the study situation. So I think that's one of the biggest things you can learn. Any other questions? I can't think of anything else that I should tell you, except what I will do is I will send Ashley a copy of our brochure so you can know who Friends in Solidarity is and the relationship. You can also see the number of religious congregations in this country that are involved with either as a member of the corporation. Our major superiors are making up the members of the corporation here in the US, and our board of directors. And you can go to our website, www.solidarityfriends.org, if you want more information about who we are and what we do to support solidarity in South Sudan.
Sister Joan, can you talk a little bit about the impact of COVID on the students? I know when you talked to Sue and me, we were kind of impressed with how they had switched to phones and how they're trying to keep it going amidst COVID.
Sure. It's a little bit more difficult to keep the students that are in the Catholic Health Training Institute involved via cell phones because they need labs, they need clinical practice, etc. But at the Solidarity Teacher Training College, because there's such a dire need for trained teachers, what they did is, because they're afraid they're not going to be back in school until maybe 2021, they started teaching the students using cell phones, smartphones. They found out that 17 of the class of about 120 had smartphones. And so they started with the incoming group, which had only been on campus for three months. And the rest of the students found out and they all wanted to be involved. So they actually rolled it out for everybody, but they have students sharing smartphones. Phones belong to the college, but they're able to purchase them in South Sudan. So for, I think, less than $200. So they've gotten smartphones and they're in certain areas of the country. They might have 3 or 4 people using one smartphone to do their assignments and get their materials back. I think they're using a Google platform. And not all the students can do this because some of it is required for internet. So they look for internet spots where they live, especially if it's in a camp, the UN camps. There probably are sites where they can access the internet, just like we could do it. But there are some who, of course, are going to be out of range of any kind of internet. But they have cell phone towers for some reason or other. There are no landlines, so everything is done by cell phone. Banking, all communications, and so now they're using the smartphones to keep the training going of the teacher at the teacher training college. I'm just amazed. I don't think I would be able to do that. So I just hats off to these teachers, and that is one of the things that we're raising funds for these days, is to make sure that there are a few more cell phones available so that students can study. I mean, why lose a whole year? Well, we're facing the same thing in this country, but we have more access to internet and computers and that. But they are trained in computers at the colleges. So we do have computer programming and access to computers both of the colleges, because we see that as the future. I mean, they need to know how to use that for medical purposes and for education. So let's see, okay. Is an effort being made to change the tradition for women for cattle? Yes, through education, definitely. That's, but it is an issue. Could you talk about my vocation? I was taught by, oh, okay. Yeah, since I was in grade 7, I think that's the key place for planting seeds for vocations myself. I thought I was being called to religious life. I did not follow up on it until I was at the University of Michigan for a year. Had to get away from home and get away from family in order to make that decision. I was attracted by the community life, I think, and the way the nuns were with one another. And then I also felt a deep call to union with Jesus. I mean, if it's not grounded in that, it won't be sustained. So that call meant a lot to me. So thanks, Mike, for asking the question. I hope that answers it.
Does anybody else have another question? We're almost at the 1:30 mark. Sister Joan, it was wonderful to have you. Thank you for being our final summer CommuniTea presenter. We're taking a break for August, everybody, but we'll be back in September. We have the CEO from Capital Area Food Bank to talk about food insecurity in the DC metro area. But Sister's often around, and we would welcome you back anytime when you have updates about the students, or if there's anything that we can pass on. We are thrilled to be a partner with you and continue to be impressed with all that you continue to accomplish and what the students accomplish, and the impact is definitely immense. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much for all your work.
Well, and thank you for letting me share it, and thank you, Ashley, for standing in. You know, every time Zoom changes how its processes go, I was not able to do what I practiced.
Right. Well, and thank you everybody for your patience while I tried to figure it out too. So
it was great. So I want to thank you for allowing me to share this information, and I hope that it's enlightened you to what Solidarity is doing and what the future of religious life is. I mean, this is the way, collaboration. We all are going to need to collaborate, especially from the US. And if anybody out there is a CPA and can review my books, I would appreciate it.
we can ask.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody.